Good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining us for this evening's edition of Reporter's Notebook. If you haven't tuned into Reporter's Notebook before, it's basically just a conversation that we have at the end of the day with a reporter. Today we have Emily Severich. And Emily, if you could go ahead and tell us what your story was today.
Sure. Hey, Victoria. So today, me and another one of our reporters, Amber Joseph, we were covering the COVID-19 situation that has arisen at East Carolina University's campus. As a lot of people know, yesterday afternoon, around 4 o'clock, UNC Chapel Hill, their administration announced that starting tomorrow, Wednesday the 19th, that they will be moving to remote learning only. That's in response to a bunch of COVID-19 cluster cases that they have received over the past 2 weeks since school started. And by their definition, a cluster, as they're calling it, is 5 or more people that are in a general similar location that have contracted the virus. So there was a cluster of students at Gateway Residence Hall, that's on College Hill at ECU, and a group of them contracted COVID-19. They're not releasing names, they're not releasing the floor that these students were on, but administration is saying that these students, as well as other students or faculty who have contracted COVID-19, are being moved to off-campus locations to quarantine. The school has also been very adamant about, students continuing to wash their hands, wear their masks, stay 6 feet apart in distance. They have to wear their masks on campus, in school buildings, in their dorm rooms. And they're encouraging people to just continue practicing, safety procedures and safety regulations in coordinates with the CDC. But our story today that I was really trying to look into, Amber got to speak with some students at ECU, and I wanted to try to get in touch with administration. Now, ECU's administration, because this is kind of just happened, it was just announced this morning that they had a cluster, did not want to make any comments. So we did get written statements from them. And in those statements, we wanted to ask, basically, are you guys going, if this trend of clusters continues, if there's more COVID-19 cases, because as they are saying, that it's only been 2 weeks since school started. So if cases continue to rise, are you guys going to take a similar approach that UNC did and choose to go to remote learning? And the information that we got from ECU's administration today was no. That is not something they're looking into. They plan to stay with in-person, face-to-face instruction. The chancellor was saying, he thinks this is the best way to get students engaged and interacting in classes, and it's just more beneficial for students to be in person. So they want to try to keep up with that as much as they can.
And you were on campus today, right?
Yes, I was.
Did it look like students were practicing the COVID-19 safety precautions? Did it look like faculty was following those protocols? I mean, how does it look? Are people within 6 feet of each other? Does it seem like it's possible to continue the rest of the semester, without trying to get an increase in COVID cases?
Sure. So that's a really good question. Being on campus, they had tons of signs everywhere reminding people, kind of how you see at grocery stores. They have walking paths, with arrows. You go this way, and then down this aisle you go the other way. So they have things similar to that actually on ECU's campus, as well as hand sanitizing stations on campus. The interesting thing that I did notice, however, was I kind of saw like a 50-50 of students wearing masks and students not wearing masks. So I really think, it's going to be up to individuals to obviously take that initiative and follow these guidelines like the administration, like the CDC is asking. But from what I saw, the school is really trying to give guidelines to the students to keep them safe. It's just kind of, if students are going to, work with that or not.
Yeah, and I want to kind of talk about that statement that the school did release. I want to pull up something right here so that our viewers can see what they said. Here's the campus. Here's the residence hall where the cluster was identified. And let me go ahead and pull up the actual statement from administration that was released today. I want to highlight this last sentence in this first paragraph where it says, as of the August 16th report, 17 employees have tested positive and 13 have recovered. In total, the past 2 weeks have averaged about 30 new cases per week. Thus far, we are relatively successful in flattening the curve. I just want to remind our audience, our viewers, the fact that they started school last week. And I don't know how you would define 30 new cases as being, relatively successful in flattening the curve. I guess we would have to move forward and understand how those numbers will look. But then I also want to go ahead and go to the second sentence in the second paragraph where the administration official says, but then the weekend comes and we see a small but visible fraction of our total student body scare us, and the community with parties that are too large, too dense, unmasked, and irresponsible. And this is kind of talking about how really the onus is on the students to be responsible and making sure that the community is safe. And I kind of just wanted to get your commentary on if students should be the ones really have full responsibility for the way that the COVID cases will rise in the future or are rising right now.
Sure. So, I definitely think it's definitely the students' initiative to take. They have the choice, if you want to call it, when they're walking on campus to not wear a mask if they really don't want to put one on. They have the choice not to utilize, the hand sanitizers on campus. They have a choice not to go out to parties and stay home and try to quarantine and stay safe from other people. But I also think at the same time that, these are 17 to 22-year-old kids. These are still students. So it's ultimately, in my opinion, it's the responsibility of the school and the school system to keep these kids safe and keep them on the right track, because these are still kids at the end of the day. They're in college. They want to have fun. They want to experience, the college life. And they're doing this amidst, a pandemic. So it's kind of a very fine line on how to keep these kids' lives at a normalcy. But I think it's ultimately the school's responsibility to make the right choices that allow these kids to then make choices on their own behalf that will keep them safe. So, I wouldn't be surprised if the school ends up doing this something similar to what UNC did further down the road. I just think, everybody's just kind of keeping their fingers crossed that we're able to keep this virus at ECU at least kind of, at bay for as long as we can. But, like you said about the parties and administration being worried about people going out, that is a huge problem. I think it was this past weekend or the weekend before, there was a party of like 400 kids at ECU that got broken up. I mean, come on. You know what I mean? I mean, you have to just be safe. But ECU's administration, the chancellor, and ECU police did say that they are going to start giving out violations and consequences to students or people who participate in activities like this, where they're putting themselves and other people at risk and not adhering to the regulations set in place. So I know they are going to start really enforcing those large gatherings and not enforcing people to not have large gatherings, but I think it's really, it's both ways. The students have to want to keep themselves safe and want to keep others around them safe, but it's ultimately the school's decision to make the right choices for the people that, came to them to be taken care of. So,
yeah, well, I guess only time will tell going forward in the future what decisions will be made and how, COVID-19 cases will be either lowering or increasing. I did want to say that statement, the full statement, is posted on our website at WNCT.com, and that's from Interim Chancellor Ron Mitchelson. So if you want to read everything else he had to say that was released today, go ahead and go to WNCT.com, and we'll also be following up on the story throughout the week, throughout the rest of the semester, and trying to keep our viewers updated on what's going on at ECU. So I just want to go ahead and say thank you, Emily, for joining us.
Thank you.